also forgot to mention that this is my very first conference talk. So, rookie mistake.
Be nice.
Oh yeah, be gentle with me. But rookie mistake, apparently I need like a belt or a pocket next time. So I am excited to talk to you guys today about the transformation that we're doing out at Starbucks and the framework that we've built to structure regular, collaborative, metrics-based conversations in order to foster a culture of continuous delivery and continuous improvement. But, there's my actual title slide. But first, fun fact. I believe I at least am the speaker that's traveled the furthest to get here today. But I have roots that go way back. My mom's in the yellow t-shirt there, pregnant with me. We've done nearly yearly trips to the Carolina beaches since I was conceived. As you heard, I was in Ashbury yesterday, and my mind completely blown by the fact that after 35 miles to the next Starbucks, because usually it's maybe 2 on the next block, depending on which way I walked in Seattle. A little bit about me. I call myself the DevOps evangelist at Starbucks, because that is a lot simpler to explain. But in truth, I'm actually on the product management team. And really, a DevOps transformation is what I consider my product to be. And so how do you measure that a company is getting more mature with DevOps? And so I spent a lot of my time thinking about how can we incorporate lean principles, how can we really know that we're moving in the right direction, and a bunch of the metrics that Nathan walked you through earlier. We actually put those into practice and utilize them to see which way we're moving the needle. But first I want to give you a little bit of context about what SRE looks like at Starbucks. We're a large organization, so we've got several different delivery models. I'll talk you through some things that are really important to consider when you're looking at metrics. And I'll show you the scorecard that I've been using with our customers at Starbucks. My goal is for everybody to be able to leave here with a few tools that you can potentially use and take back. We call ourselves SRE at Starbucks. We wanted to keep the acronym, but we didn't want to limit our scope to site reliability engineering. So we call ourselves Starbucks Reliability Engineering, and this is what our organization looks like. I own the bottom pillar there, which is community. That includes everything from meetups, which is just getting our people to talk to each other and learn from each other. I also write newsletters and try to explain basic DevOps concepts to the admin assistant sitting next to me, so that and then how we're implementing them at Starbucks to give everybody a picture of, we were just talking about how many different definitions of DevOps there is. Well, I think the best definition is how you can see it in action, right, to really explain that. As I mentioned, health metrics is another big part of my role and the customer relationships around that. And then we also have a really cool investment in a learning journey at Starbucks, where we actually put our people through a 12-week training program with a boot camp, several intensive additional training days. We run a bunch of deep dive workshops, and do a project at the end of those 12 weeks. And that's actually, that graduation project presentation is one of my favorite parts of my job. If you want to feel a transformation occurring, you go to one of those graduation projects and you listen to the person that's been saying, I don't know about this DevOps thing, showing you how they've applied what they've learned at the end of the training. So that's kind of my role and my world that I work within. We have several different delivery models that you see up at the top. We have more long-term engagements. We have a diverse organization, right? We have all levels of maturity across DevOps. So each of our delivery models is kind of there to help accelerate teams and meet them where they're at. So we have reliability, that's our embedded teams. That's typically a long-term relationship. We have offshore that can support them, and they're embedded on Scrum teams acting on behalf of our centralized SRE organization. We also have solutions, which is more project or targeted engagements that we have, where we have teams that they want to own their operations, but they want our expertise to help them implement it, or they need us to come in and do something hands-on. And our third pillar is products, where we're building multi-tenant deployment pipelines so that teams can focus on their core competencies, and we can offer them and we can help accelerate their work. So that's a little bit about Starbucks. I think we have a slightly unique way that we organize ourselves, so I thought it was important to give you a little context around what SRE looks like at Starbucks. And since transformation is my product, it's really important to me to figure out, how do we measure that we're successful? And luckily, we've got some really great resources in the DevOps community. We've got the State of DevOps, which not only has some great industry standard metrics, but also some comparisons on, how the maturity level of organizations throughout the world. We also, need to think about our own internal Starbucks initiatives and priorities when I'm measuring our success. And also the customer experience. As a centralized organization, I want to make sure that the people we're working with enjoy working with us, feel like operations isn't a headache, feel like they know what's going on and have some observability within their systems. So those are kind of the key things that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. How do we measure? And I came to this upsetting / beautiful conclusion, which is the fact that there is no real outcome-based way to measure the success of reliability engineering on its own. Now, it's frustrating because I want to know how my team's doing, but it's exciting because we live in a complex world and a complex organization, and this means that the teamwork is required in order to move the needle forward. And actually, at the very basis of what this is my beautiful metrics-based definition of DevOps right here, right? I mean, because it is not just called ops, it's DevOps, right? And you can apply some of the tools, you can do the DevOps things, but if you're doing infrastructure as code and you're gonna approach it as a waterfall project with a big monolithic application, right? You're heading in the right direction, but you're not gonna get the results you're looking for using infrastructure as code, right? You might create a tool and have a cool multi-deployment or multi-tenant enterprise deployment pipeline, but you've got teams that have long-standing branches and complex dependencies. You're not going to enable them to go to market faster without a partnership. It's not just the tools. Here's another way of looking at it. You look at the basic metric of mean time to recovery. If you look at all the steps it takes from opening up an incident to it being closed, how many teams are involved in this, right? it's SRE, it's development, it's tests, it's ITSM managing the Prio 1 issue. It's a team effort. And so that's kind of the beauty of doing the DevOps. It's not just for operations, right? So it's all about collaboration. And in the lean world, we know that all change, all improvement requires change, but not all change is improvement. So that's why we have to measure. And so I've and my team have invested in the discipline of having regular customer meetings, and talking through the metrics and figuring out how we can better improve together. Okay, so if you're gonna look at metrics and improve, you've got to make sure you've got good metrics. So I'm gonna talk a lot about what a good metric looks like and give you some examples of how we practice this. First off, it's got to be outcome related. So what are the outcomes we're trying to achieve at Starbucks? Well, Starbucks technology, you see in the middle there, we're trying to deliver today. We're delivering faster. From an SRE perspective, we want to enable that faster delivery, but build reliability in as well. And so when we chose the outcomes that we were looking for at Starbucks, we took the basic speed to market, stability, right, the two fundamentals of DevOps, and we also added in some other internal priorities like cloud readiness. We've had a cloud initiative going on, so how do we measure not only how fast we're transitioning to the cloud, but also how ready our teams feel for it? Operational health, which also in my world speaks to that customer service level. Security and insights, which in the latest state of DevOps is referred to as observability. These are the outcomes that we want at the end of the day with the work that we're doing. So in preparation with meeting with new customers or talking with our existing ones, I first started wanting to have the conversation about outcomes. In and out. By putting together a checklist, I'm like, which outcomes are you guys interested in? And as soon as I wrote that down on paper, I said, oh yeah, absolutely everybody here is looking for all these outcomes. So going back to my Agile Scrum roots, I created cards with each of these outcomes, and I sat down with our customers, and we had a stack ranking activity where we had the conversation about what are your priorities? What are the trade-offs that you guys want to make? Of course, you want to be able to have all the things, the lower the risk, the increased stability, increase the speed to market, but like, is there something specific you need to focus on? It was a really great conversation starter to be able to really talk through what those trade-offs and get better alignment between the teams. So whenever I see a metric, I make people really nervous because I always ask, well, what decision are you going to make based off of this metric, right? A good metric means that you're going to change your behavior based off of what you're learning from it. So one thing I started doing is whenever I would present metrics to, and I'll back up one step, quarterly business reviews is kind of the cadence that we're doing right now. And we get the VP of the teams in the room to have a conversation about how they're doing and what needs to happen. So whenever I get in front of the VPs, I never present a metric without talking through what are my insights? What are the things that our team sees in this that you need to know? And there's always an action item based off of the data that we're seeing. For the record, I have edited all the data today to protect the innocent, this is an example of exactly the kind of things that we talk about. Another thing you'll see here is that it's pretty visual. you should be able to take a look at it and immediately know what's going on. Self-explanatory. My next best practice. Here's another visual. The balance of your workload. How much of your time are you spending paying off tech debt? If it looks like 2% of your time is being spent doing tech debt, it shouldn't be a surprise that 60% of your work is interrupt driven, right? And so to be able to visually have this conversation and talk about where we're headed has been a really impactful way to talk about we need more investment. Here's how much we've progressed. Here's how it's impacting our workload, and here's the next step we need to take to improve. All right, people will always behave based off of the data that you're showing them. I have had the pleasure of watching people jump to attention after our cloud initiative that I mentioned, we started doing a show back and chargeback model for here's how much you guys are spending on the cloud. Behaviors change really quickly once your name gets at the top of the naughty list, right? Same thing with security and patching, right? People are going to behave once you bring something to light. So you have to be really thoughtful about what metrics you're looking at. I have an activity that I run. I talk about metrics a lot. It's actually part of our DevOps learning journey. So I had a short video, but it doesn't seem to be working this morning, but I'll talk you through it. What it looks like is I get 5 volunteers and line them up, and I give them a deck of cards, and their work is to count through all of the cards. We do 2 rounds of it. Oh, and one person that's doing overall time, and each person counts the time, the amount of work that they do. First run through, they go through the entire deck, pile it up nicely, hand it to the next worker in the series. Sounds pretty waterfall. Second round, we batch it into 13. Same thing, run through everybody, and a very interesting thing happens every time we run this activity. If you notice, we've cut the time in half between the large whole deck round and the smaller batches round. This is actually from the activity I bribed my coworkers to film last week. 2 minutes, 14 seconds the first time when they counted through the whole deck. Minute 9 the second time. So it's a business person, right? That's the outcome you're looking for. But there's another really interesting thing that happens every time. If you look at the individual workers, each and every single one of them takes longer to organize the smaller batches of work. So the question is, are you focusing on the right outcome? Are you optimizing for efficiency versus speed to market? Efficiency is all about saving money. You know what's really efficient use of resources? A freeway that has every square inch covered with cars. But how fast is that freeway going to move? You might be utilizing every square foot of that pavement of that floating bridge we were talking about last night. We have 2 of them in Seattle. But you know which freeway the cars are going to be moving faster on. All right, a few things to avoid. This typically results in a really lively conversation in my workshops. So I'm just throwing a few of them out there here for you today. So velocity, that's a great agile metric. It's really only relevant to the team, right? That doesn't tell you speed to market. That's just telling you how you can predict how much work the team is going to do the next time. It doesn't tell you about business value being delivered. Time between failure, old school operational metric. We all know now that we want to fail faster. We'd rather have much simpler, faster, quicker failures instead of long delays and then huge complex releases where we're looking for the needle in the haystack of what we've deployed that's failed. And vanity metrics. I came up with a new vanity metric yesterday. Vanity metrics essentially mean metrics that just are pretty, they feel good. They're really great for a salesperson. So from an IT perspective, that's like, yeah, we have 1 million users that have signed up for accounts on our website. But maybe 10,000 of them are active, right? The million might sound cool, but if you have a problem with people actually signing up and staying active, it's a very different thing. For me, the ultimate vanity metric is weight on the scale. I step on the scale, I tend to weigh the same amount no matter what's going on with me, but my pants will get bigger or tighter depending on how I'm taking care of myself, right? So for me, the pounds I weigh is not really relevant. I gained 10 pounds last year. And I was totally bummed out about it until I found out, I realized it was 7,000 muscle. Right? Very different perspective on that metric, right? That's the outcome I'm looking for is to be strong and awesome, not a certain number of pounds on the scale. All right, here's another one, easily measurable. It is so much work to collect all these metrics. Oh, so much work. And it's a huge investment of time, but it's really worth it. But to do that, you have to be sane, right? I have to make rules like I want to change the system and the processes. I don't want to be collecting metrics by hand. I had a developer about a month ago who I was like, hey, I know you've automated a data pull from this one system that I need for our QBR. Can you hand it to me? He said, oh yeah, it's going to take me a couple of days. Okay, red flag. Turns out, when I had a conversation with him, he wanted to go through the data by hand and flag it or categorize it for the last 6 months worth of data. Well, you know what, that's really noble, but I would rather you categorize it live and just move forward. Let's be honest about where the data's at, what's going on, and fix forward. Here's just a random example of that. We did a proxy migration, and oops, we forgot to update our synthetic ping test. Well, all right, so that's why for our external APIs, October doesn't look so good. But you just present the data, show the reality of it, and you still get the same perspective when you're looking at the trending. You can see that deployment actually cut 50% of our ping duration down. All right. Also important, as I mentioned, predictive of future performance. You might have a bunch of disparate data, but you really need to translate through the noise and see which direction you're headed. As I mentioned, State of DevOps gives us some really cool insight. So comparative, we're able to tell, if we look at, you can see all the outcomes that I'm measuring against in that right-hand column. Left-hand column. That I know how we measure against low, medium, high performers in the industry, and that's a really great indicator for us to know kind of where we're at and where we want to focus next. So once you've got the power of a good metric, you've got to use it for good. You've got to use it to change the organization. The problem is this whole discipline thing. How many of you guys are really good at planning and doing? The checking and the acting, that's the tough part, right? By the time you get to do, it's like time to plan and do the next time around, right? So that regular cadence that we have of these customer conversations, That's our real investment in continuous improvement, and using these metrics to have data-based decision-making and conversations so that we can really, you can't solve a problem that you can't admit exists, right? So you've got to measure, you've got to talk about which direction you're heading. Now, all right, I think I covered most of this already. Yeah, regular cadence, data-driven decision-making, regular conversations, it's an investment. But it really pays off in creating this continuous improvement culture. Oh, look, the culture slide. It's an important one. Be aware of your audience. Personally, I refuse to operate non-transparently. So regardless of what environments I'm in, like I said, you can't fix a problem that you don't admit exists. But it's helpful to understand the culture that you're working with. Luckily for me, Starbucks is a super awesome culture. So like Nathan was mentioning, DevOps tends to side on the generative, which is awesome. So put that all together, what's that look like? At least initially, this is my pretty rainbow bright colored DevOps scorecard that you use. None of these metrics should be too surprising. And if you see, it's color-coded so that you can map the outcome to the metric that we're measuring it against. And everything on the left-hand column here is actually based off of a survey that I sent out. How do you feel? It's important. How well are you doing is just as important as how much are you enjoying doing it. They tend to correlate. But I want to make sure that we've got the big picture on what's really going on within our organization. Now, there's several problems with this. You'll notice that I've got a couple of question marks in here, right? Security is tough. The way that we have it structured, I have a hard time getting access to that data because it's automated according to manager, your personal profile. So I'm not scared to be transparent and put on here the things that we're striving for, that we're just not there yet. Although we've made some huge progress, this is a bit out of date. So next steps for us, since I don't have overall organizational reach, I would really love for us to have some leadership support for some of these key metrics, especially like stability and speed to market. I need my guys that did the enterprise deployment pipeline to help me with these metrics. It is such hard work collecting them. But it's a tough problem to solve. My scorecard, we've been doing it for 1.5 years now. So I need to add better trending to it. We've got a better history of data to show kind of where we've gone. And you saw a bunch of PowerPoint reports, I have to confess, right? I have a lot of this. I typically do PowerPoint / some more dynamic reporting, but it's a lot easier to show you my PowerPoints today. But making that more dynamic, more accessible, self-service, real time. There's I'm working with so many teams, so many different systems, where we're always just taking one step closer to the finish line. And then security, like I mentioned. So that's a little bit about what we're doing out at Starbucks. That's pretty much all I have for you today, but hopefully you've gotten a picture and an idea in your head on what it might look like to improve your collaboration, to get better insights and have better conversations, and invest in that culture of continuous improvement. Thanks for your time.